Welcome on in to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name's Steve, and it's time for another video, not the video I planned on doing. And as you can see by the date up top here, maybe it's my own fault, but I did intend to do a video on drafting from the early position, picks 1 through 4 in a 12-team league, or 1 through 3 in a 10-team league, or I should say, and 1 through 3 in a 10-team league. And I did a little bit of prep for that video earlier today before going to the gym, and not really happy with it. I think I need to fine-tune it a little bit more. So maybe not doing this random exercise that I started to do last night as some research would have, served me well, spending that time on the video I planned to do. But instead, we're going to get this. We're going to be looking at the history of the rookie receivers ever since, I think, the draft that really reigned in, cemented the new age of receivers coming out and how prepared they are day one when they come out, that being the 2019 draft with, DK Metcalf, a bunch of guys into the third round. I believe, is it this draft to 2020? There's a couple of guys too in the third round that are getting left out that may have had some better rookie years. But just looking at the first 2 rounds, because that's really how deep we're going to be drafting anyways on draft day, is looking at the first 2 rounds for the most part. So that's fun. If you are new to the channel, hey, welcome. You can become a member. There's information on that in the series of player highlight videos for James Cook and David Njoku. Just the final, it's in the description, or there's timestamps that will clearly dictate when I talk about that stuff, because it's like, I think it's labeled talking about stuff or something. The other thing I want to let you know about on Thursday nights, so tomorrow night at I think I'll probably overlap the Hall of Fame game, so I'll probably turn that onto my TV and maybe talk. We can watch some of the Hall of Fame games together too. I don't know if there's any important part of that game, but I'm sure there's some guys who I'll be interested to see. And we have been getting together the past several weeks and doing mock drafting on Thursday nights. So come on in. It's not you're not gambling, nothing like that. It's the Sleeper app. Just download that. You don't need a credit card or anything, and you can join in. I just send out a link, and there you go. You're in, as long as there aren't too many people, which we haven't filled out the draft quite yet. So easy entry. Let's get into it. The past 5 years of the fantasy rookie wide receivers, their success, their wide receiver finishes, these are half PPR wide receiver finishes, but give us a general idea of how successful they were anyways. So back in 2019, we can see, Marquise Brown, a little bit of a disappointing season for the first overall pick there in Baltimore, but even worse for N'Keal Harry. I do have to say for this draft, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, 2 of the better performers in this draft, were definitely thought of as possibly being like the first picks in the draft. The NFL just apparently didn't feel the same way, but they fell, and look at how they performed. So something else to think about. Pre-draft expectations compared to where they actually go can mean something. Deebo Samuel put in a really good rookie season there, first guy taken in the second round. These are in order of what order they were taken. But that's about it for importance. Mecole Hardman, wide receiver 59, is just really not going to cut it to help you out in fantasy football, and neither are all of these outside the top 100 finishes for Isabella, Paris Campbell, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. And if you have the ability to, I'm not going to sit here and go over each one, but do think of the situation that these wide receivers are getting themselves into, and the quarterback situation, the team situations. Thinking back to 2019, remember this is Tennessee, but they did have Ryan Tannehill, I would say, in his prime there, at least that next season. This season right here is probably his best season. Maybe not ever, but it's one of the ones that I can remember. That brings us on to 2020, a draft that had a lot of first-round talent. And, people were talking about Michael Pittman, T. Higgins potentially getting into the back end of the first round. There were some Laviska Shenault lovers, but I don't think there was any real hype for him in the first round, just like there's some KJ Hamler lovers. But, Henry Ruggs, rough first season. Jerry Jeudy, maybe has been about this good roughly throughout his career, I suppose. CeeDee Lamb came out strong. Of course, the best wide receiver in this draft, and just for reference here, Jalen Reagor was, I mean, the talk was between these four: Justin Jefferson, CD, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs. So it was a bit of a surprise that Jalen Reagor goes before them. Justin Jefferson ends up going the latest out of them and being the best out of them. So, store that in the back of our mind here. And then Brandon Ayuk also ends up having a good freshman season, despite how his rookie second year off season goes. Team didn't like how he was putting in, or lack of effort that he was putting into work. But yeah, T. Higgins also a good season. Michael Pittman, so a strong season. So Michael Pittman let down there, but then obviously he puts things together. And Chase Claypool had a good season. So there is that, but he also would have been one of the guys to get, is this a late, not end of career, but late career Ben Roethlisberger, is that? Yeah, that was Ben Roethlisberger's second to last season. Roethlisberger was having those shoulder issues, but every now and then he would let one go, and often enough, I guess, that Chase Claypool had a good year. That was a 12-3 Pittsburgh team, so a good team that always helps. And, a good quarterback, even though despite, I should say, being at the end of his career. So, 2021, we get this class where we had Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, another strong class, Devontae Smith, those three really at the top of it. A lot of people loved Elijah Moore. Is this missing, or is this 2022? Okay, Jameson Williams, yeah. So, look at that, a class that was thought of very strongly. And there we go. Those are the finishes. Jamar Chase gets into a good situation with a young quarterback that things work out very nicely. Kadarius Toney, Rashad Bateman towards the end of the first rounders don't quite pan out. Nobody else really does. Elijah Moore borderline there. Useful in his rookie season. Tutu Atwell. So towards the end of the second round, not really useful. Towards the end of the second round, not really useful. Towards the end of the second round, not really useful. Kind of seeing a pattern there as we get to these end of the second round guys. 2022, we got Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jameson Williams, another stacked top four kind of class. That pretty consensus top four, I believe, at least in the circles that I was following this draft within. And Jameson Williams doesn't count, but you can see all three of them do contribute to differing abilities. Drake London going to a team with a struggling quarterback situation. Bit of a surprise that he was really, most people were between Garrett Wilson and Jameson Williams as the wide receiver one in this class. Chris Olave, I have to say, actually, it was probably more of a top two between Garrett Wilson and Jameson Williams. I think Drake London was a bit of a surprise. Chris Olave, maybe less so of a surprise, as it just wasn't quite in that same conversation. People didn't know if he was a slot-only kind of guy, etc. John Dodson, a little bit of a surprise, I felt like, going here. Didn't love him. Treylon Burks, this was about what you were thinking of him, but once again, think of the quarterback situations here, not always greatest. Christian Watson does go to a good quarterback situation, does suffer a lot of injuries, still finishes as a wide receiver 34 and a crazy finish to his rookie season. George Pickens, good season. That's a rookie. That's a rookie quarterback there. So keep that in mind. And then we got last year, plenty of disappointment right up at top. JSN situation goes to a team with two wide receivers ahead of him. You got to think of, what's the expectations of these guys? Are they going to have a chance to be the guy? Quentin Johnson also going into a situation with two guys, but whatever, he does get a chance eventually of being kind of the two, and things don't work out. He had an opportunity, I'd say more so than JSN, and did worse with it. But good quarterback situation. Zay Flowers, good situation overall, works out. Jordan Addison, good situation overall, works out. Jonathan Mingo, rookie quarterback again here. This is, I think, what you should expect a little bit more often with the rookie quarterback situation, but we see it's not a for sure thing that is going to result in a poor season. It did with Jonathan Mingo, but I think Jonathan Mingo got overdrafted by about 3 rounds, so there is that. Jaden Reed, ends up being a good quarterback situation, kind of a unique situation. Rashee Rice, good quarterback team situation. I thought a wonderful fit as well for what they needed, and that all comes together as the season goes through. Marvin Mims does not come together. Quarterback situation, I don't know. Odd usage, just doesn't work out. But once again, a guy towards the end of the second round, whereas, yeah, I mean, these are also towards the end of the second round, so that's not a death sentence, right? So what are the results of this? On average, the receivers finished as wide receiver 59s, and this was being generous. Anybody outside of the top 100 there, I just put 101. They could have been 200, 300. But I just put them at 101, so whatever. Average finish, not really very usable. And this was excluding Mechie and Jameson. They got health exemptions from this average finish for those wide receivers. When we look close at the top 12 finishes, wide receiver 1 type finishes, two rookies did finish as top 12 guys. That's a 4% chance of that over the past several years. Top 24, 6 guys were in the top 24. Well, really 13 to 24. I excluded these top 2. 12% of the entries here ended up as a top 24 finish. Top 36 wide receivers 25 through 36. 12 of them. So that's the most likely scenario, is to be a wide receiver 3. About 1 in 4 chance that these guys will be a wide receiver 3, just strictly looking at the numbers there. And, replacement options, maybe guys who go on some heaters at some point in the season, like a 5-game streak or 5 games where they kind of go off. Who knows exactly why they end up finishing in this section, but one way or another, I would say still usable. 3 players. So all in all, that comes to roughly 50% of the wide receivers drafted in the first 2 rounds over the last 4 years were usable for fantasy football, to one extremer than another, most likely being in that wide receiver 3 category. So let's see, FYI, what did I write? The top 48 guys last season, Romeo Doubs, Noah Brown. So Romeo Doubs not even make this list, right? And that's his rookie year. So guys can also pop off when they weren't drafted in the first 2 rounds. Noah Brown, Rashid Shaheed, Gabe Davis, those types of wide receivers, to give you an idea of what so you can just I was just kind of pointing out like the types of seasons, usually a little bit uneven, sometimes with a big old pop. Guys who might be a little bit harder to, oftentimes at least, narrow down and actually benefit from their success in terms of being a top 48 receiver. So that brings us to the 2024 draft. Here is where they are being drafted, their average draft positions. Marvin Harrison. So we got one of them, 4% chance. So the odds are against Marvin Harrison Jr. to finish in the top 12. But if there's anybody, he's as good of a prospect, better than any of those other receivers going into a good situation with the quarterback and everything. We'll look at situations in just a little bit, but, looking pretty good there. Malik Neighbors, second off the board. All these guys, top 10 receivers off the board, too. That's definitely going to help the stock, obviously, but situations matter, as we saw, and there was no one factor either way that worked out perfectly, but there were some patterns that we can pull away from, and they're obvious factors. So once again, we'll get to that in a second, trying to predict which guys are going to be most likely to succeed and via their ADP. Is it a good value, bad value, whatever, bad bet? So Malik Neighbors, wide receiver 24, seems fine to me overall. Rome Odunze, I think we're talking about a guy who could be of value here. Top 12 guy, rookie quarterback, so there is this like 50-50 thing with Rome, right? Also, the wide receiver 3 on his team. So a couple factors working against him. Brian Thomas Jr., the wide receiver 3 going into the season, might be the wide receiver 2 by the end of it, so there's some opportunity there. A slightly disappointing but still good quarterback in Trevor Lawrence up to this point in their career. There's some excitement there. Xavier Worthy going into a really good situation. We think a big playmaker. Ricky Pearsall, not so much. Xavier Legette, not so much. Keon Coleman, quarterback, great situation. Expected to be the wide receiver 1. No real competition to prevent him from being the wide receiver 1. outside of maybe Dalton Kincaid just being the number one receiver is possible. So Keon Coleman, I think, in a very good situation, much like Rome here, even better situation, taking a few spots behind him. I think that's a heck of a value there probably. Ladd McConkey, similar thing. I mean, he's coming in probably as the wide receiver 2-ish, but I think a real good chance of being the wide receiver 1. Guy who, throughout the draft process, I've compared to Chris Olave, who we saw ended as a wide receiver 25 in his rookie season. There it is. I think similar enough situation, teams that are going to be running or short passes were also a part of a running game for them. But running a fair bit, however, for one reason or another, Thrust being the wide receiver 1 on their team. So, good quarterback situation there. I think by the end of the season, the wide receiver 1, a wide receiver 25-ish, wide receiver 30 finish, I think feels very, very possible. Jalen Polk, I don't know, is this situation much better than when N'Keal Harry took over? I'm not so sure. To me, I thought he was a little bit overdrafted. There's some similarities. And then Adonai Mitchell here, wide receiver 61. I think that there is some similarities to the DK Metcalf situation. Clear, Tyler Boyd for DK Metcalf was the wide receiver 1. Adonai Mitchell walking in clear number 1 with Michael Pittman. But both of them going later than a lot of people predicted because of concerns about their game. So, hey, they got something to prove. But also going into, not perfect situations, probably a better quarterback situation for DK Metcalf. But I think a very promising situation if we're projecting it forward, just based on what we saw in a small sample size last year for Adonai Mitchell to possibly get a lot of work. DK Metcalf ended up as the wide receiver 32 his rookie year. So that feels quite realistic for Adonai Mitchell, that borderline wide receiver 3 to wide receiver replacement, wide receiver 4, 40-ish territory, wide receiver 40-ish, I think makes a lot of sense for Adonai. So I think there's some value here. It might be a little bit hard to capitalize on, or maybe it'll be something that second half of the year kind of comes together. Who knows? Also, Josh Downstairs, wide receiver 3. How much does that progress possibly take away? But by the numbers, 50% of the receivers will fail, okay? So the worst situation here is a situation where you were basically drafted to future-proof the wide receiver situation. Some of these guys here that were outside of the top 100s and stuff, a whole lot was not expected of them. They just got drafted by a team who's looking forward into the future and liked them a lot as a talent. So that's Ricky Pearsall. He might not see the field a whole lot this season unless or until there are injuries, in which case go right ahead, pick him up off the waiver wire. But drafting-wise, unless we get some, I don't want to say shocking, some unique news throughout the offseason, just somebody that pretty clearly you don't have to worry about. And I think he has the latest draft spot, and I would say it could be later than that. Then the situation number 2 here is a stinky quarterback that's not going to be helpful. That really hurts, makes it a lot tougher for these guys to succeed. I think we can safely say Jalen Polk, not in the best quarterback situation there, and to start the season, it might be better than it is to end the season. And I don't say that to disparage Drake May. It's just Jacoby Brissett's a solid backup quarterback, a solid short-term starting quarterback. But Drake May is probably not. He might be better than that. He might not. I don't know. But on the other hand, he is walking into a situation where he could be the wide receiver 1. I just don't think that. I wasn't he didn't get drafted high enough. I wasn't a huge Jalen Polk fan. I thought he got drafted a little bit too high. So for me, I'm not going to bump him up like I did one guy out of here that you can see I crossed off this list there in my league neighbors. But Xavier Legette also coming into a situation where the quarterback stinks. Could be a lot better this year, but a lot better still might be just middle of the league. And there's a primary receiver already in town. Just a lot has to go right for Xavier Legette to turn out, I think. So not overly excited about that. I think there's a pretty high chance that he is not useful for fantasy football. And Malik Neighbors also was in this tier, but he's a top 5, right, player taken off the board, top 5 draft pick. Coming into a situation where he does have an opportunity to be there is no wide receiver 1, and even the tight end 1 left town. There's a lot of receptions that are up for grabs that Malik Neighbors almost certainly has a pretty good chance of taking a hold of. So, and also, this is a quarterback situation where we've seen 2 different sides of this coin, and most recently he stunk. But the year before that, DJ had a pretty darn good year, Danny Dimes. So who knows? Tier 3 situation, they're coming in expected to be the 3rd wide receiver on their teams. So Adonai Mitchell, I got a question mark next to that. Like I said, he very well could be the wide receiver 2 when all is said and done this season. Xavier Worthy, I don't quite think so. Hollywood Brown this year. Rashee Rice is kind of your safety blanket type of wide receiver. I don't think Xavier Worthy will be the wide receiver 1 or 2 this year. So I think that does hurt him, makes him quite a bit more volatile. Might be one of those guys who finishes borderline useful, somewhere between 40 and 60, but it's just really hard to harness when that happens. So I think a pretty, borderline chance of failing. We're getting towards that 50% mark right there at wide receiver 7. Here we're in that 50% mark. So Brian Thomas Jr., another guy coming in to start the year, he's the wide receiver 3. I think by the end of the year, if he progresses as they hope, he will be the wide receiver 2 there. So I liked Adonai Mitchell more than Brian Thomas Jr., but based on draft order, I'm also kind of keeping them in that order once we get to the tier situations. And Rome Odunze is coming in as the wide receiver 3. Now, a little bit tip of the cap towards a potential good year for Rome Odunze is the connection that he and his rookie quarterback, 50% chance. There's ways that this does not cash out this season. He's got real good competition in that wide receiver room. He's got a rookie quarterback. There's things working against this that a failure would not be a surprise. Once again, he's on that borderline. I think all these guys are on that borderline. So Rome Odunze, wide receiver 41. What do we got? Being taken behind Xavier Worthy. I don't know. It's understandable enough. 47. It all makes enough sense. Now here's where I think it starts to get interesting when we look at these. These are the guys who have like wide receiver 1 opportunity. Ladd McConkey, to me, my faith in it, I do think that he's the wide receiver 1 pretty darn early on in the season. I really like him. Like I said, I think he's a Chris Olave-ish type skilled wide receiver. I would have taken him earlier in the draft if it was up to me and I needed a wide receiver and I was drafting earlier than that. And, he's whatever. I thought he could go in the first round. I had a first to second round kind of tag on him. And really kind of preferred him in the first round. So I think Josh Palmer is the wide receiver 1 to start the season, but I don't think it takes too long before that could be not the case, and maybe it isn't even entering the season. I have a lot of faith in Ladd McConkey. Then you got Keon Coleman, who's clearly, they're putting the wide receiver 1 their situation. So I do think that there's a high chance that Keon Coleman does not disappoint. Now, I don't know what the ceiling is. There's a lot of mouths to feed, oddly, in that offense. Nothing's proven. Keon Coleman wasn't the twinkle in a lot of draft people's eyes. A lot of people are concerned about this Buffalo offense this year, which I don't quite understand. They were better than the second half of last year, and now they're going to have an off season with the coordinator. But, they did lose Stephon Diggs. Not that he helped that offense while it was better. So I'm not too concerned about things, but it's not like I get overly excited about Keon Coleman, but he's a guy who I think we could look back and say, what were we doing drafting him? 45, so late. He had such a great situation. Why were we questioning anything there? So I think he has the second best situation that he's walking into. Ladd McConkey, third best. Those two both, going a little bit later than several others, but still in that same conversation at least. And Marvin Harrison, he is clearly going to be the wide receiver 1 coming in. That is the expectation, and just the talent coming out of the draft and everything too, incredibly high. So you look at it all, and our cutoff line here is this like Rome Odunze, Brian Thomas Jr. area. I don't know that there's a whole lot of fall off here. These are your questionable guys. One of them should succeed. Two of them may fail. I think we're pretty confident that these 4 should succeed, really. And I think we're pretty confident that these 3 should fail. So there you go. That's just my input into how to look at these rookies. Feel free to agree or disagree. That's all fine. And let others know what's your argument for some of these guys to the opposite effect. Why do you think they will succeed? And what's your argument against, Keon, Ladd McConkey, I think are the 2 ones that people will want to pick on the most. Let others know your opinions. They are valid. All right, that is it. I appreciate you. That went longer than expected. I might re-record this. We'll see. Or cut out a lot. I don't know. Peace out.